නිර්වාණ සරණයි අපි මල් පහන් පූජා කරමු සාදුකාරයක් දෙලෙන්න වෙන තවත් මල් සැට්ටේට සාදු කියලා සහභාගී වෙන්න කවුරුහම සාදු කියන්නේ
මල් පූජා
එහෙනම් ගිලම්පසට සාදුකාරයක් දීලා හිටෙන්න සාදුකාරයක් දෙන්න ගිලම්පසට පූජා කරන්න සරණයි සුබ සන්දාවක් වේවා ඔබ හැමදෙනාම අදත් මේ එකතු වෙලා ඉන්නේ අද සෙනසුරාදා දවස අගෝස්තු මාසයේ 14 වෙනි සෙනසුරාදා සන්ධ්‍යා භාගයේ පස් කාලයේ කරන පින්කමක් හැටියට අද දවසෙත් මේ සම්බුද්ධ පූජාමය පින්කම සිද්ධ කළා ධර්ම දේශනාව පැවැත්වීමට අපේ හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේ වැඩම වෙලා ඉන්නවා ඔබ ඒකට එකතු වෙන්න පළමුවෙන් අපි වෙනදා වගේම සිහිපත් කරන දහවල් කාලේ උදෑසන කාලයේ දානමාන ආදී පිරිනම පිරිස යයෝමා සමහේෂ් පොට්ටවල මහත්මීන් පවුලේ දූ දරුවෝ සමග දානයේ පිරිනමන්නට යෙදුණා. ඉතින් ඒත් හැමදාම මාසිකව කරන දානමය පින්කම හැමදාම කවුරු හරි කෙනෙක් සිහිපත් කළා වැදගත් තමන්ගේ ජීවිතවල වැදගත් දවසක කරන පින්කම් අතරේ මේ පරිලෝක ඥාතුරු සිහිපත් කරමින් පුණ්‍යානුමෝදනා කළ සෙත් ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරන්නට යෙදුණා. ඒ වගේම අපි හැමදාමත් සිහිපත් කරන පින්වත් පිරිසක් ඉන්නවා. ඒ අසනීපෙන් පසුන බෙනජ්ජවීර මහත්මයා, වෛද්‍ය කීර්ති වීරසිංහ මහත්මයා, අනුෂ්ක සිල්වා, දරුවා අනෙක් ත්‍රිකාවල දරුවා සචිත් දිලංක දංගල්ල, තරුණ මහත්මිය, අනුෂාදී රුක්ෂ මහත්මිය, බසමාලා දැරිය, විමල් රණසිංහ මහත්මයා, චින්ත්‍රාන් මහත්මයා, එවැගේම මර්සිඩිස් කැතලින් ග්‍රීසන් දැරිය, නිරූපමා කරුණාරත්න මහත්මිය, නතනේ කැතලීනෝ ලදරුවා, මැලේසියන් ජාතික පීටෝෂාන් මහත්මයා, ප්‍රවීන් ප්‍රනාන්ද් මහත්මයා සහ පවුලේ සියලු දෙනා නිරෝගී සුවය සැලසේවා කියන ප්‍රාර්ථනාවෙන් අසනීපෙන් පසු රොබර්ට් සහ ග්‍රේස් ස්කොට් මහත්මීන් ඒ වගේම චම්‍ර ප්‍රියංකර මහත්මිය, ප්‍රින්සි නෝනා, අපි හැමදාමත් අපිට උපකාර වෙන ඒ හැම දිනාම සෙත් ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරමින් ඒ වගේම අපේ පන්සලේ විහාරස්ථානයේ දායකා පින්වත් හැම දිනාට නිරෝගී සම්පන්නිය සැලසේවා කියන කාර්මික ප්‍රාර්ථනාවෙන් යුක්තව අපි අද දවසේ මේ ගිලන්පස් සම්බුද්ධ පූජාමය පින්කම සිදු කළා. පින්පෙත් අනුමෝදන් කරනවා. ඒ වගේම අද දවසේ ධර්ම දේශනා පින්කම පවත්වනු ලබන්නේ අපේ කෝවිද හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේ විසින් එහිට දායකත්වයේ දරන ලබනවා අයිරාංගනී මුතුකුඩාරච්චි මහත්මිය සහ සිසිල් මුතුකුඩාරච්චි මහත්මයා. ඒ වගේම ඉන්දික ගුණතිලක මහත්මයා, පින්සර සහ රුවිනි ජීවන්දර ඒ පිරිස. ඒ හැමදෙනාම මේ පින්කම අද සිද්ධ කරන් ධර්ම දානමය පින්කම සිදු කරන ලබන්නේ අපවත් වදාළ අතුරුගිරියේ පෝරේ ශ්‍රී මහා විහාරාධිපති අතිපූජ්‍ය රුක්මලේ ධර්මකීර්ති නායක මාහිමිපාණන්සේට පින් පැමිණීමෙන් පිණිස අද ධර්ම දානමය පින්කම සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා ඒ කරුණු කාරණා හිතේ තියාගෙන කවුරුත් එක්ක අපිත් එක්ක එකතුලා මේ පින්කමට සහභාගී වෙන්න මේ මොහොතේ කෙටියෙන් පිරිත් දේශනා කරමු. ඒ වගේම well friends, welcome all of you to this evening. Today is August 14th evening of Staten Island Buddhist Vihara, Sambuddha Puja offering and Dhamma Deshana, Dhamma Dana, the meritorious activity that we are getting ready to perform. And all of you, please, as usually we do, thinking of all people and friends of temple as well as all people around the world who have become victims of this COVID-19. May they all and may we all be well, happy and peaceful and successful in our lives, in their lives, and everybody we have good health and to practice spirituality. May everybody have ability and skill and wisdom to practice the Dhamma and find their own peace and happiness in their lives. Having such thoughts, we do have two items today during the Vassana retreat. This Saturday evening we do have Dhamma Desana, and today Venerable teacher is going to be the Venerable Kovida from Canada, Ottawa, Canada, and he is after our Vandana he will be give the Dhamma sermon for you to enjoy and find your own peace and happiness. So wishing Nibbanic happiness to all, especially today in cherished memory of late Venerable teacher who was in Sri Lanka in the Rukmale Dhammakirti Nayaka Mahathera, remembering him, his devotees and our devotees, Airangani Mutukuda and Sisil Mutukudarachchi, Indika Gunatilaka and family, and Pinsara and Ruini Jivandara family are sponsoring this Dhammadana offering. So we wish all of you good health, peace and happiness and success. Having said those, please join with us to offer Buddha Puja now first. To observe 5 precepts, please recite Namo Tassa 3 times to observe Panchasila. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Sanghang Saranang Gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. අදින්නා දානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි කාමේසු මිච්ඡාචාරා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි මුසාවාදා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි සුරාමේරය මජ්ජපමා දට්ඨානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි තිසරණේන සද්ධින් පංචශීලං ධම්මං සාදුකං සුරක්ෂිතං කତ୍වා අප්පමාදේන සම්පාදේත
සාදු 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 නමෝ තස්ස භගවතෝ අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතෝ අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතෝ අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස ඉතිපිසෝ භගවා අරහං සම්මා සම්බුද්ධෝ විච්ඡාචරණ සම්පන්නෝ සුගතෝ ලෝකවිදු අනුත්තරෝ පුරිස ධම්මසාරති සත්තාදේ මනුස්සානං බුද්ධෝ භගවාති ස්වාක්ඛාතෝ භගවතා ධම්මෝ සම්දිට්ඨිකෝ අකාලිකෝ ඒහි පස්සිකෝ ඕපනයිකෝ පච්චත්තං වේදිතබ්බෝ විඤ්ඤුහිති සුපටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ උජුපටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ ඥායපටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ සාමීචි පටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ යදිදං චත්තාරි පුරිස යුගානි අට්ඨ පුරිස පුංගලා ඒස භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ ආහුනේයෝ පාහුනේයෝ දක්ඛිනේයෝ අංජලි කරණීයෝ අනුත්තරං පුඤ්ඤක්ඛෙත්තං ලෝකස්සාති ඝනසාරප්පදිත්තේන දීපේන තම දංසිනාති ලෝකදීපං සම්බුද්ධං පූජයාමි තමෝනුදං ගන්ධ සම්භාර යුත්තේන දූපේනාහං සුගන්ධිනා පූජයේ පූජනීයං තං පූජා වාදන උත්තමං වන්න ගන්ධ ගුණෝපේතං ඒතං කුසුම සම්තතින් පූජයාමි මුනින්දස්ස සිරිපාද සරෝරුවේ පූජේමි බුද්ධං කුසුමේන නේන පුඤ්ඤේන මේතේන ච හෝතු මොක්ඛං පුප්පං මිලායාති යථායි ධම්මේ කායෝ තත්තායාති විනාශ භාවං සුගන්ධං සීතලං කප්පං පසන්න මధుරං සුභං පානීයමේතං භගවා පටිගන්නාතු මුත්තම අධිවාසේතු නොබන්තේ ගිලාන පච්චයං ඉමං අනුකම්පං උපාදාය පටිගන්නාතු මුත්තම අධිවාසේතු නොබන්තේ ගිලාන පච්චයං ඉමං අනුකම්පං උපාදාය පටිගන්නාතු මුත්තම අධිවාසේතු නොබන්තේ ගිලාන පච්චයං ඉමං අනුකම්පං උපාදාය පටිගන්නාතු මුත්තම වන්දාමි චේතියං සබ්බං සබ්බඨානේසු පටිච්චිතං සාරීරික ධාතු මහා බෝධිං බුද්ධ රූපං සකලං සදා යත්ස මූලේ නිසින්නෝ සම්බාරි විජයං අකාපත්තෝ සම්බං යුතං සත්තා වන්දේ තං බෝධිපාදපං ඉමේතේ මහා බෝධි ලෝකනාතේන පූජිතා අහම්පිතේ නමස්සාමි බෝධි රාජා නමස්තුතේ කායේන වාචා චිත්තේන පමාදේන මයා කතං අච්චයං කමමේ භන්තේ ගුරි කඤ්ඤ තථාගත කායේන වාචා චිත්තේන පමාදේන මයා කතං අච්චයං කමමේ ධම්ම සම්දිත්තික අකාලික කායේන වාචා චිත්තේන පමාදේන මයා කතං අච්චයං කමමේ සංඝ සුපටිපන්න අනුත්තර. පින්වත්නි, මෙතන සිට බොහොම කෙටියෙන් පිරිත් දේශනා කරමු. අද දවසේ මහා මොග්ගල්ලාන බොජ්ජංගය සහ සීවලි පිරිතයි දේශනා කරන්නේ. අපි නම් සඳහන් කරපු හැම දිනාටත් ඒ වගේම අද ගිලම්පස් සහ මල් සපයා දුන්නු සුරංග පෙරේරා මහත්මයා සහ පවුලේ හැම දිනාටත් ඒ වගේම වජිරා යාපා මහත්මිය සහ නිශාන්ත මහත්මයා ඇතුළු පවුලේ හැම දිනාටත් අපි සෙත් ප්‍රාර්ථනා කිරීමෙන් ඒ වගේ මාලිකා ගුණතිලක මහත්මිය ඒ වගේම කුමාරි සිරි ගුණතිලක මහත්මයා ඇතුළු හැම දිනාටත් අපි සිහිපත් කරන ඒ පවුලේ හැම දිනාමත් මේ අද දවසේ පින්කම් වල සහභාගී වෙනයි. ඒ හැම දිනාටම දුක් නිරෝගී චිරජීවනයේ සැලසේවා කියන ප්‍රාර්ථනාවත් ඇතුව පිරිත් දේශනා කළ ආශිර්වාද කරමු. සමන්ත චක්කවාලේසු අත්‍රා ගච්ඡන්තු දේවතා සද්ධම්මං මුනි රාජස්ස සුනන්තු සග්ග මොක්ඛදං ධම්ම ශ්‍රවණ කාලෝ අයං බදන්තා ධම්ම ශ්‍රවණ කාලෝ අයං බදන්තා ධම්ම ශ්‍රවණ කාලෝ අයං බදන්තා. නමෝ තස්ස භගවතෝ අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතෝ අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතෝ අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස. එවං මේ සුතං ඒකං සමයං භගවා රාජගයේ විහෙරති වේලුවනේ කලන්දක නිවාපේතේන කෝපන සමයේන ආයස්මා මහා මොග්ගල්ලානෝ ගිච්ඡකූටේ පබ්බතේ විහෙරති ආබාධිකෝ දුක්ඛිතෝ බාල්ලගිලානෝ අතකෝ භගවා සායන්න සමයං පතිසල්ලානා වුත්තිතෝ යේනායස්මා මහා මොග්ගල්ලානෝ තේනුපසංකමි උපසංකමිත්වා පඤ්ඤත්තේ ආසනීනි චීදීනි සජ්ජකෝ භගවා ආයස්මන්තං මහා මොග්ගල්ලානං ඒතදවෝච කච්චිතේ මොග්ගල්ලාන කමනීයං කච්චියාපනීයං කච්චි දුක්ඛා වේදනා පටික්කමන්ති නෝ අභික්කමන්ති පටික්ඛමෝසානම් පඤ්ඤායති නෝ අභික්ඛමෝති නමේ බන්තේ කමනීයං යාපනීයං බාල්ලාමේ දුක්ඛා වේදනා අභික්ඛමන්ති නෝ පටික්ඛමන්ති අභික්ඛමෝසානං පඤ්ඤායති නෝ පටික්ඛමෝති සත්තිමේ මොග්ගල්ලාන බොජ්ජංගා මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතා භාවිතා බහුලී කතා අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තන්ති කතමේ සත්ත සති සම්බොජ්ජංගෝ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතෝ භාවිතෝ බහුලී කතෝ අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති ධම්මවිචය සංබොජ්ජංගෝ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතෝ භාවිතෝ බහුලී කතෝ අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති විරිය සම්බොජ්ජංගෝ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතෝ භාවිතෝ බහුලී කතෝ අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති පීති සම්බොජ්ජංගෝ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතෝ භාවිතෝ බහුලී කතෝ අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති පස්සද්ධි සම්බොජ්ජංගෝ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතෝ භාවිතෝ බහුලී කතෝ අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති සමාධි සම්බොජ්ජංගෝ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතෝ භාවිතෝ බහුලී කතෝ අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති උපේක්ඛා සම්බොජ්ජංගෝ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතෝ භාවිතෝ බහුලී කතෝ අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති ඉමේ කෝ මොග්ගල්ලාන සත්ත බොජ්ජංගා මයා සම්මදක්ඛාතා භාවිතා බහුලී කතා අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තන්ති තග්ග භගව බොජ්ජංගා තග්ග සුගත බොජ්ජංගා තීතමවෝච භගවාන් අත්තමනෝ ආයස්මා මහා මොග්ගල්ලානෝ භගවතෝ භාසිතං අභිනන්දී උච්චාහි චායස්මා මහා මොග්ගල්ලානෝ ධම්මා ආභාදා තථාපයිනෝ චායස්මතෝ මහා මොග්ගල්ලානස්සසෝ ආබාධෝ අහෝසීති ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සම්බ දුක්ඛං විනස්සතු ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සබ්බ භයං විනස්සතු ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සම්බ රෝගෝ විනස්සතු උරත්වා පාරමී සබ්බා සබ්බේ පච්චේකනායකා සීවලී ගුණතේජේන පරිත්තන්තං බනාමයේන ජාලිතීති ජාලිතාමි ආයෝ ආමයිස්වාහා බුද්ධ සාමි බුද්ධ සත්‍යම් නාසාසී මේ ච මෝසී සන්නාන ජාලිති සංජලින් සදේව මනුස්ස පූජිතං සම්බලාභා භවන්තු නෝ සීවලී ච මාතේරෝ සෝරවෝ පච්චයාදිනම් පියෝ දේව මනුස්සානං පියෝ බ්‍රහ්මාන මුත්තමෝ පියෝ නාග සුපන්නානං පීනින්ද්‍රියං නමාමහං පදුමුත්තරෝ නාම පජ්ජිනෝ
සබ්බ ධම්මේසු චක්කුමායිතෝ සතසාසම්මි කප්පේ උප්පජ්ජිනායකෝ සත්තාං ධාරමූලෝහං මහා දුක්ඛ සමප්පිනෝ මාතා මේ චන්දදානේන එවමාසිසු දුක්ඛිතා කේසේසු චිඤ්ජමානේසු අරහත්තම පාපුනින්දේ දේවානාගා මනුස්සාච පච්චයානුපනින්ති මේ පදුමුත්තර නාමංච විපස්සින්ච විනායකං සම්පූජයින් පමුදිතෝ පච්චයේ විශේෂතෝ තතෝ තේ සංවිශේෂේන කම්මානං විපුලුත්තමං ලාභං ලබාමි සබ්බත්ථ වනේගාමි ජලේ තලේ තදා දේවෝ පනීතේහි මමත්තාය මති පච්චයේහි මා වීරෝ සසංඝෝ ලෝකනායකෝ උපට්ඨිතෝ මයා බුද්ධෝ ගන්්වා රේවත මද්දස තතෝ ජේතවනං ගන්්වා ඒතදග්ගේ තපේසිමං රේවතං දස්සනත්තාය යදායාති විනායකෝ තින්ස භික්ඛු සාස්ත්‍රේ සාලෝකග්ගනායකෝ ලාභීනං සීවලී අග්ගෝ මම සිස්සේසු භික්ඛවෝ සම්බ ලෝකයිතෝ සත් කිත්තයි පරිසාසුමං කිලේසා ඡාපිතා මයං භවා සම්බේ සම්මුතා නාගෝ අබන්දනං චත්වා විරාමි අනාසවෝ ස්වාගතං වතමේ ආසී බුද්ධ සෙට්ඨස්ස සම්තිකං තිස්සෝ විඤ්ඤාණුප්පත්තා කතං බුද්දස්ස සාසනං පටිසම්භිදා චතස්සෝ ච විමුක්ඛා පිච ඝට්ඨමේ චල විඤ්ඤා සච්චි කතා කතං බුද්දස්ස සාසනං බුද්ධ පුත්තෝ තේරෝ සීවලී දින ශාවකෝ උග්ගතේජෝ මහාවීරෝ තේජසා දින සාසන රක්ඛන්තෝ සීල තේජේන ධනවන්තෝ යසස්සිනෝ එවං තේජානුභාවේන සදා රක්ඛතු සීවලී කප්පට්ඨායිති බුද්දස්ස බෝධිමූලේ නිසීදිය මාරසේනප්පමද්දන්තෝ සදා රක්ඛතු සීවලී දස පාරමිතං පත්තෝ පබ්බජී ජින ශාසනේ ගෝතම සක්්‍ය පුත්තෝ සීතේරේන මම සීවලී මහා ශාවකාං අසීතින්සු පුන්නතේරෝ යසස්සිසෝ බබෝ ගංගලාභීසු උත්තමෝ තේන සීවලී එවං අචින්තියා බුද්ධා බුද්ධ ධම්මා අචින්තියා අචින්තියේ සුඛසන්නානං විපාකෝ හෝති අචින්තියෝ තේ සංසච්ඡේන සීලේන කන්ති මෙත්ත බලේන ච තේපි අනුරක්ඛන්තු සබ්බ දුක්ඛ විනාශනං තේ සංසච්ඡේන සීලේන කන්ති මෙත්ත බලේන ච තේපි මං අනුරක්ඛන්තු සබ්බ භය විනාශනං තේ සංසච්ඡේන සීලේන කන්ති මෙත්ත බලේන ච තේපි ත්වං අනුරක්ඛන්තු සම්බ රෝග විනාශනං ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවානාගා මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ලෝක සාසනං ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවානාගා මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ලෝක සාසනං ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවානාගා මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ලෝක සාසනං ධම්මේ ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ ධම්මේ ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ ධම්මේ ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ දේවෝ වස්සතු කාලේන සස්ස සම්පත්ති හෝතු ච පීතෝ භවතු ලෝකෝ ච රාජා භවතු ධම්මිකෝ හිමිනා පුඤ්ඤ කම්මේන මාමේ බාල සමාගමෝ සතං සමාගමෝ හෝතු යාව නිබ්බාන පත්ති ඉදං මේ පුඤ්ඤං ආසවක්ඛයා වහං හෝතු සබ්බ දුක්ඛා පමුඤ්චතු. සාදු.
Is to take refuge in the Buddha. Okay. And then afterwards, I'll be speaking about the three qualities of the Buddha and how they're related to our mental defilements, to our kilesa. It's a very interesting relationship. Okay. So, refuge in the Buddha. What is a refuge? A refuge is a place of safety, a secure place where it is peaceful and sane, not crazy, insane, and confused. A place where there is understanding, intelligence, and harmony, away from the world of confusion and disharmony, craving and greed, hatred and ill will, ignorance and delusion. Because people's minds are restless and confused, they are caught by craving, resentment, and delusion. And so they take refuge in the wrong things. They kill and hurt others, they steal and cheat, they compete with others and get angry and upset. They say bad things and spread rumors. People behave very selfishly, only thinking about themselves and what they possess. They only think in terms of me and mine. Their minds are caught in this illusion of self or ego, and so they cause problems for themselves and for others. Most people do not understand themselves, understand their own minds and emotions and the laws of nature, and are therefore restless and confused, constantly grasping and clinging to worldly things, including to ideals, concepts, ideals, views, and opinions, and ideas. They do not know the Dhamma, the nature of the world and the way things are. The more we understand the Dhamma through study, reflection, investigation, and meditation practice, which is mind training and cultivation, the more we begin to realize the profundity, the depth and vastness of the Buddha's teachings. And it becomes a real joy, very exciting and wonderful, to take the three refuges in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And this inspires the mind. The word Buddha is a lovely and interesting word. It means the one who's awake, or the one who knows intuitively with mindfulness. The one who is alert and wise, intelligent, clear and peaceful, patient, kind, and compassionate. And the first refuge is in the Buddha, as the personification, the human symbol, an example of wisdom and compassion. What was the Buddha awake to? He was awake, alert, and sensitive to the problems, confusion, and suffering of the world. He understood the truths of existence and the nature of the human condition. When we take refuge in the Buddha, it doesn't mean that we take refuge in a person or in a God or some savior. We take refuge in that which is wise and intelligent, sane, kind, and compassionate in the world, in the universe, in human nature, in our own minds and hearts. It means that we dedicate ourselves to the noble path, to the way of understanding, peace, and wisdom. It means that we want to follow the Buddha's example, the example of Siddhartha Gautama, in seeking the highest truth, enlightenment, so that our minds can be free of worry, fear, anxiety, sorrow, craving, hatred, and delusion, all the factors that create mental, emotional suffering. And we can become peaceful and joyful human beings. The Buddha was a healer, a doctor of mental, emotional problems. And in teaching the Dhamma, he wanted us to understand our own minds and to take responsibility for our own mental health and sanity, and not to depend on others. He wanted us to awaken our own Buddha nature, our own wisdom mind. Some people worship the Buddha as a god, as a supernatural being, asking for good luck in business and family matters, and then asking for more money and wealth. They pray and wave joss sticks at the Buddha statue. This is only superstition caused by fear, uncertainty, insecurity, and craving, desire. They want the Buddha as a powerful outside agent to help them fulfill their wishes and dreams. This is not the true meaning of taking refuge in the Buddha. Superstitious people also want charms and talismans to protect them from ghosts and spirits, bullets and knives, etc. They often ask monks to give them these things, and they're willing to pay a lot for them. This practice happens in countries like Thailand. This is taking refuge in fear and superstition. And this doesn't help us, because fear will come back again and again to trouble us. Dealing with fear takes a lot of awareness, mindfulness, and insight. People in Western countries are now more modern and sophisticated. They don't take refuge in magic charms. Christians take refuge in the belief that there's a God and eternal life after death. People take refuge in money, in the bank, in the stock market, in lottery tickets, hoping to win a lot of money. People take refuge in material possessions, romantic relationships, and sense pleasures. They believe these pleasures will give them true and lasting happiness and security. Some take refuge in their physical beauty, good health, and strength. But that is still taking refuge in things that offer no real safety, because these things are impermanent, temporary, and uncertain. These things and conditions around us and in us can change at any time. We cannot guarantee what will happen in the future. Life is uncertain, always changing. Only death is certain. Our bodies and physical looks have to change. We have to grow old, experience sickness, and we all have to die someday. Our health and strength have to change. This is the law of nature. So there is no safety in the material or physical world. Our parents, spouses and children, and friends also have to grow old and die someday. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in wisdom, in right understanding and view, when we understand the conditions of this world, when we live and act wisely, we can accept these natural changes, the ups and downs of life, with peace, humility, and equanimity. This is our real place of safety, our real home, a peaceful and wise mind that understands and accepts the changing conditions of existence. This is the Buddha mind. Now, I wanted to mention that there's a reason why there is this truth of anicca, impermanence. Of course, things outside of us are always changing. People are always changing. Conditions are always changing. And everything that we experience in life is also changing, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. And the reason for this is because we're in fact a process of body and mind. And in Pali language, it's rupa and nama. Perhaps you've heard these two words, rupa and nama, physical and mental process. And we're alive because we're a process, constantly changing. If we're not a process, we wouldn't be alive. And what is interesting is that we often overlook this fact, that we're a process of body and mind. Why? Because we're social creatures and we use language. We use labels to communicate, I, you, he, she, and so on. And of course, we use names to call each other, to identify each other. So this is our social world, or what we call social convention. So because we're caught in social convention, we tend to see each other as selves or ego personalities. And it's very easy to do so, unless you're practicing mindfulness and regular reflection, investigation. Then you can see the truth of mind and body, rupa and nama. For example, when you're practicing mindfulness of breathing, the physical sensation of breathing, the rising, falling of the chest, stomach area, or sometimes some people can feel it in the nose, the nostril. That physical sensation of the breath, that is rupa, the body. And the awareness of the physical sensation of the breath, whether it's in the chest area or at the nostril, that is mind, nama. So when we're very mindful of in-breath, out-breath, we see rupa, we see nama, mind and body process. This is a practice that is done in the forest tradition. And of course, when we do mindful walking, it's the same thing. You can see the feet moving as rupa, the body, and the awareness of the feet moving and stepping. You can see it's the mind. It's a very good practice. We're just rupa and nama, just body and mind. And when we eat, the digestion process is very, very complex. But fortunately, we don't have to worry about it unless you're having digestion problem. But if you're healthy, you don't have to worry about the digestion process because the body has the intelligence to take care of this complexity. Very, very complex. And once I took a half-year course, a biochemistry course, and this is what we studied, the digestion process. And only then I began to understand, to learn how complex the digestion process is. Now, what I'd like to speak about now is the three qualities of the Buddha and how they're related to our mental defilements or kilesa. Okay? Now, all of us have kilesa, mental defilements. Even Siddhartha Gautama, before he became the Buddha, the enlightened one. And we all have mental defilements because it's a part of our education, or upbringing, or conditioning. by the society, by school, by the home environment. Because we're educated, our minds are educated, conditioned to label, because we need labels to communicate. Also, we are conditioned to judge, to criticize, to condemn, to compare, and of course, to like or not to like, to want or not to want. And of course, sometimes to have aversion. Aversion, strong dislike, sometimes hatred and ill will. And as you know, very often when we compare ourselves, we experience envy and jealousy. So this is what creates our mental defilements. And it is this conditioning that we all have that creates the illusion of a permanent self. That this I, this me, is something which is permanent, which is separate and independent from the rest of nature. And when we cling to this belief in a permanent I or self, we suffer from ignorance. So our main defilement is ignorance and delusion. Ignorance and delusion. And from ignorance and delusion comes selfish craving and attachment. Craving and attachment. Or clinging. You can use the word clinging also. Loba. And also from ignorance and delusion, we experience, as we said, not only dislike, but strong dislike, aversion, hatred, ill will, jealousy, disrespect, resentment, and so on. And delusion is what we experience on a regular basis. And this is why the Buddha said we need mindfulness to overcome delusion. We're deluded by too much thinking, too much mental activity. And we're deluded by our habit of always reacting. We're always reacting from early childhood. It's a very strong conditioning. Her habitual reactions, labeling, judging, criticizing, comparing, liking, not liking, wanting, not wanting, and so on. We all have this strong habit. Now, when we look at the three qualities of the Buddha, we see that there's a very interesting relationship to these qualities and our mental defilements, kilesa. Now, the qualities of the Buddha are wisdom and mindfulness. Wisdom and mindfulness. The second quality is simplicity and renunciation. Simplicity and renunciation. And the third quality is loving kindness and compassion. Metta karuna. Metta karuna. Now, when we look at these three qualities of the Buddha, we see an interesting relationship to our human defilements, as we said. You see that wisdom and mindfulness is the medicine, the antidote for ignorance and delusion. Wisdom and mindfulness is the medicine, the antidote for ignorance and delusion. Wisdom, right understanding, helps us to purify the mind of ignorance. This clinging to a permanent self, the idea that I is something permanent, separate, and independent. Because wisdom gives us the understanding of anicca, impermanence. Things are unsatisfactory, uncertain, because they're always changing. And of course, there is no permanent self, no permanent I. And mindfulness, of course, as we said, helps us to overcome delusion, mental delusion, from too much thinking, because as you know, we tend to think too much. Although we need to think in daily life, but even when we don't need to think, the mind keeps thinking unnecessarily, compulsively. And worrying is a good example. When we worry, or you're obsessed about something. Sometimes we're caught in regret. We keep regretting something that we did. We keep regretting and feeling guilty, feeling upset. Or you're obsessed about the future. And as you know, when we think too much about the future, we naturally experience anxiety and fear. Because the future is uncertain. And with the pandemic, we have added more uncertainty, right? And of course, more fear, more anxiety. Because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. So this is why present moment awareness, mindfulness is so beneficial. So that we can keep calm and keep patient. Because we know eventually it is impermanent. It will pass. It will pass. And of course, mindfulness helps us not to react so easily, because that's one aspect of our delusion. And this is why the Buddha gave a very interesting and a very challenging teaching, advice, when he said, when you see, just see. When you hear, just hear. Don't react. Now, it sounds very simple, but as you know, it's very difficult, very challenging, because we're so accustomed to be reacting all the time, don't we? From childhood. No, this is beautiful, this is not beautiful, this is tall, this is short, this is bad, this is good, I like it, I don't like it, I want, I don't want, and so on. Or this is better than this one, or you're better than me, or I am better than you, and so on, always reacting. So this teaching is very, very challenging. When you see, just see. When you hear, just hear. And in my own practice, I found, especially when people get upset with me or angry with me, I see that it's a good opportunity to practice this advice of just keeping calm, keeping patient, and not react to people's anger or to people's unpleasant words. Because you find that when you don't react and you keep calm, you're not affected by it. And when you don't react to somebody's anger or unpleasantness, you see that it is their problem. It is their kilesa. And very often it's their fear, insecurity that is causing, anger or unpleasantness and so on. Now, the second quality of the Buddha, as we said, is simplicity and renunciation. And when we look at our mental defilements, we see that simplicity is the medicine, the antidote for selfish craving. Always wanting something. And we see that renunciation is the medicine, the antidote for personal clinging, attachment. Now, simplicity means to be content, to be calm and content what you have. And of course, in our modern consumer society, it's not so easy unless you're very wise and you're practicing the Dhamma on a daily basis. Because, we're in a very greedy society, always consuming, always buying, shopping, and so on. So in the modern context, simplicity also means to spend wisely, to be more aware, to spend wisely so that we don't overspend. Because as you know, with the credit card, people often overspend because it's so convenient having a credit card. But people overspend all the time. And they have to pay, all the interests and so on. So we can still practice the spirit of simplicity, even in our modern consumer society. But it takes practice, it takes mindfulness, it takes reflection, that whatever pleasure we experience, whatever happiness we experience, when we buy things, it doesn't last very long. It's only short-lived. And of course, when you practice and spend wisely, you're able to save. You're able to save more money. And renunciation, of course, as you know, in a Buddhist culture or a Hindu culture, renunciation often means to become a monk or a nun. But of course, not everyone can become monks and nuns. So renunciation really means the ability to let go of personal attachment, personal clinging, because we're also conditioned to become attached, not only to people, family, friends, children, personal possessions. Sometimes we get attached to our social status or reputation. We become attached to, of course, material things. And we become even attached to our knowledge, our reputation, and so on. And of course, we become attached to the body, the physical body. We see the body as me and mine. And what the Dhamma is teaching us is that as human beings, we have the unfortunate habit of identifying with things that are impermanent, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, including the body, of course, and family, friends, as we said, children. Because whatever we identify with as me or mine, it has to change because we're a process. Always remember that. Everything is a process. And of course, we learn with mindfulness how to objectify emotions and moods, and let them go. And this is one of the great benefits of mindfulness, the miracle of mindfulness, because it's a state of non-duality. And so we can see things objectively as they are, know that they're impermanent, and let them go. Now, what does that mean? Mindfulness is a state of non-duality. It means that when you're being mindful, when you're being aware, there is no self, no I being aware, being mindful. There's only that energy of attention. Just like when you see, you know there's a tree there. Just like when you're driving, you know there's a car in front of you, or there's a red light or a green light, you know. But we're brought up, we're conditioned to identify with our sense experiences. You say, I am seeing something, I am hearing something, I'm smelling something, I'm tasting something, I'm feeling something by touch, and of course I am thinking something. So that creates a duality. Duality means subject and object. And the I is always the subject. It's very interesting how we are conditioned with this duality. And it starts very young. When a child says, I like this or I don't like this, that is already the beginning of duality, meaning subject and object. I like something or I don't like something. That is duality. As we said, the I is always the subject. Very interesting. So this condition of duality is very innocent. It's also very innocent. But then it gets more deep-rooted because of our sense experiences. I am seeing something, I am hearing something, etc., etc. And the I begins to feel separate. It feels separate. Separate from the world, separate from nature. And because of this illusion of duality and separation, we ask the question, what happens to me when I die and where do I go after death? The I feels separate. And it's caused by thinking. So, because mindfulness is a state of non-duality, meaning there is just that energy of attention, awareness, we can see things as they are and know they're impermanent. For example, instead of saying, I am upset, you say, there is upset. There's a state of upset. There's a big difference. Instead of saying, I am angry, or I'm afraid, or I'm frustrated, you breathe mindfully and you say, there is anger, or there's a state of anger. There's a state of fear. There's a state of frustration. There's a state of loneliness, and so on. See, it's a very big difference. Because when we just see something as they are, we're not holding on to it. We're not grasping at it as something personal. And this is something that the Buddha realized. Because as human beings, we have the habit of identifying with things. I am angry, I'm upset, I'm happy, I'm unhappy, and so on. We're holding on to these feelings and emotions as something personal, as mine. My happiness, my unhappiness, my anger, my frustration, my fear, and so on. But what the Dhamma is teaching us is that all these things that we experience are actually just a temporary mental state, a changing condition of the mind. It is anicca, anatta. So this is a very good practice. And now they're teaching this in modern psychotherapy. It's called mindfulness-based psychotherapy. They're using this wonderful technique that the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago. To see something objectively as they are and know it is impermanent. It is anicca, temporary mental state. So it's much easier to let go of. And of course, when emotions are very strong, like anger or upset or being very frustrated, very anxious, and of course, being depressed, when you're very, very depressed, this is, there are forms of dynamic mindfulness where you can move with mindfulness, like mindful walking, the dynamic hand movements that Bhante Kondanya teaches. And there's also Qigong movements. Just moving with mindfulness, breathing and moving. It's very good for releasing stress, anger, upset, frustration, anxiety, and also depression. The video is on YouTube. And if you're interested, Just type Qigong with Bhante Kovida. Chigong, 2 words. Qigong with Bhante Kovida. You see 2 videos there, and they're very simple movements. So this is the spirit of renunciation, the ability to let go of things, to let go. And as you know, the mind has the ability to be always creating stories, countless stories or thoughts and images. And sometimes those stories include, mini dramas, unpleasant memories, regrets, feeling guilty, things that are that cause anxiety or fear. And these mind-created stories, they seem very real, don't they? But they are delusions of the mind. So there's a very useful technique. It's called mental noting. So you're caught up in a story or a mini drama, and you just say to yourself, breathe mindfully, and you just say, it is only thinking, thinking, thinking. Only thinking, thinking, thinking. And you come back to mindful breathing or hand movements or mindful walking. And when you do that, it makes you realize that it's just thinking. Whatever the mind is creating, the story, it's only thoughts. That's all. And as you know, thoughts are impermanent. They're just temporary mental objects in the mind that come and go. They're not reality. And that includes anything that makes us afraid, some form of fear. To say there is fear and it's just thinking, thinking, thinking. Only thoughts. Very useful practice. And of course, when we have unpleasant memories, it's important that we realize that they're just thoughts, only thoughts and images that are happening in the present moment. And of course, you have the quality of loving kindness and compassion, which naturally is the medicine, the antidote for all our negative mental, emotional states, and dosa. Strong dislike, aversion, resentment, hatred, ill will, jealousy. So the quality of metta is very, very useful. And especially when we suffer from guilt, you have regrets, you have guilt, and many people have this problem. And when we make mistakes, we have to forgive ourselves. We have to be kind to ourselves, because as human beings, we are not perfect. But because of social conditioning, we think that we should be perfect. We ought to be perfect. And very often we create a negative image of ourselves. I'm such a bad person. I'm so stupid. I'm awful. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? I should have done that. I should have said that. So that negative image and the negative thoughts, the judgmental thoughts, creates conflict in the mind, suffering, fear. Because guilt is an aspect of fear. Just like when you have a conflict with somebody, and it can be anyone, it could be a close friend, it could be your family member, you create a negative image of that person because of that conflict. So when we're suffering from guilt, it's important that we do metta. And remember, we're not perfect and everyone makes mistakes, everyone. So you can say that it's perfectly natural to make mistakes. So when we do metta, loving kindness, we replace those negative, judgmental thoughts with kind, positive thoughts. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May I be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May all beings be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. So the next time you're suffering from regret and guilt, please remember to do this loving kindness practice. And remember, it is natural to make mistakes because we're human. So we must be kind to ourselves. And of course, we try to be kind to others, even if they hurt us or say unpleasant things. Very important. So again, this is a good reflection on the three qualities of the Buddha and our mental defilements. So at this time, I would like to welcome any questions you may have. Also, there's a very lovely technique, mindfulness technique, that was taught by Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, the well-known Vietnamese teacher. He's still alive, but he is unable to teach. But he still inspires his Sangha and his many devotees around the world. He calls it mindful breathing and smiling. It's very good. For example, see if you're upset, you breathe in, and as you breathe in, you say, breathing in, I know there's upset in me. Breathing out, I smile. And you smile at the upset. And you remind yourself, it is anicca, it is impermanent. Breathing in, I know there's fear in me. Breathing out, I smile. And you smile at the fear. Breathing in, I know there's frustration in me. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I know there's craving in me, desire in me. Breathing out, I smile. It is impermanent. This is a very good practice because mindful smiling, just as you know, smiling, it's a wholesome state of mind where you can smile mindfully or even laugh. Laughing is good too because it makes us feel positive and it makes us feel more relaxed, more calm. And also, this is a smile of metta, the smile of loving kindness. Because when we can smile at whatever arises in the mind, we're not judging it or criticizing it. We accept it. It is there. And that's why it's a smile of metta. And it's a wholesome state of mind. So you can try this practice. It's very good, very good. And I think Bhante Kondanya informed you that I have some Dhamma talks on YouTube. So you can just search Bhante Kovida. You'll find several Dhamma talks there. And there's one video with the dynamic meditation, where you move your hands mindfully. Very easy practice. Easy way to focus your mind in the present moment and to let go of unnecessary thinking. Because sometimes we think too much. And also, I think Bhante Kondanya gave you this information. There are some Zoom videos that were recorded on YouTube. Just search Buddhist Embassy. Buddhist Embassy, EMBASSY. You see the videos there, the Zoom videos. I just like to do a reading. Normally, we see the world with our conditioned minds. Our view of the world is colored by our judgments and discriminations, our likes and dislikes, our desires and aversions, our hopes and fears, our worries and anxieties. So our perception of reality is limited by our mental states, by how we see and react to the world. Rarely do we see the world with a calm, clear mind. Rarely do we see things as they are with clear awareness or calm attention. The restless, untrained mind is vulnerable to circumstances. It is easily affected by changing conditions. Sometimes good or pleasant things happen and the mind is happy. Sometimes bad or unpleasant things happen and the mind gets upset. There is suffering. Mind is disturbed. Our state of mind depends on how we react to things or situations. It can remain cool and calm or become heated and upset, depending on how personally we take things. One who follows the path of mindfulness has less fear and anxiety. One can be calm and patient despite the changes and accidents around him or her, because one sees things as they are, impermanent, unsatisfactory, and empty of a permanent self. Although there are problems in life, one can be calm and patient without anger or resentment. Being impatient and angry or irritable does not remove the problem. It only causes more suffering and makes the problem worse. With patient endurance, wisdom, and determination, dukkha, mental emotional disturbance, is overcome. The mind becomes peaceful. One is light-hearted, optimistic, and free, not gloomy and depressed. Mindful breathing or mindful hand movements or walking can help us to stop thinking too much about the past with regret and guilt, and stop thinking about the future with anxiety, fear, and uncertainty. We're able to experience tranquility and stillness, which is most beneficial and precious in our busy and stressful lives. Our lives are not determined by what happens to us, but by how we react to things. Not by what life brings to us, but by our attitude we bring to life. The world is as it is. Life is constantly changing and uncertain. A calm and positive attitude causes a chain reaction of positive thoughts, events, and outcomes. It is a catalyst, a spark that creates extraordinary and surprising results. Events do not cause us suffering. They may cause us physical discomfort or some inconvenience or delay. It is our mental emotional reaction to those events that cause us suffering. Upset, anger, frustration, anger, and despair. Without mindfulness, we are enslaved. We are caught and deluded by mental activity, by too much thinking. This is a source of dukkha, mental emotional disturbance. We believe that to follow our impulses and satisfy our desires and expectations is freedom. This is an illusion. In fact, we are slaves to craving, clinging, frustration, fear, and despair. Despair is like depression, being very sad, being very sad. In mindfulness, one is not only restful, calm, and happy, but alert and awake. Meditation is not an escape or evasion. It is a clear and serene encounter with reality. The Buddha's teaching is about freedom and the qualities that come from that freedom. Loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, bliss, calmness, and peace. One can see those situations where the mind is open, spacious, and responsive, and calm. And the times when the mind contracts around something. Like when you worry so much or you become obsessed with something, the mind becomes very caught. The possibility of freedom is contingent on seeing the mind contracts and get distracted and lost in a story or a mini drama. A simple example is when we go to the movies and get totally absorbed in the film, the movie. Then there's a moment when we step out of the theater and suddenly we have a reality shift, a mini awakening to where we are. In the same way, we're often lost in the movies of our minds. It takes practice to wake up, to emerge from our mind-created worlds. Thoughts, images, and moods are not necessarily connected with reality, with what is actually happening in the present moment. This is why the Buddha taught us to be aware of them before we're influenced or caught by them. We have to be mindful. The world is in a very confused, agitated state. The mind changes from like to dislike, from craving to aversion, from anxiety to frustration, with the restlessness and confusion of the world. If we can learn to make the mind calm and still, it will be the greatest help to the world. A mind that is burdened by memory, by the weight of experience, it cannot be fresh and innocent. It cannot be simple and alone, quiet and blissful, free from fear, desire, and time, past and future. It cannot enter the vast and timeless dimension of silence and the unknown. Out of this silence, this emptiness, is the awakening of love, goodness, and beauty. In the light and space of silence, all problems are dissolved. Meditation is a movement in silence and the unknown. The known is the past as thinking and memory. The known is the past as thinking and memory. The ending of thought is silence and creation. And that silence has immense depth, a lasting, incorruptible beauty and peace. So may you all be well, peaceful, and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.